The studio lights were merciless, casting every shadow, every flicker of emotion onto the global stage. Kristi Noem sat poised, her signature smirk fixed like a weapon. Across from her sat Ibrahim Traoré, unshaken, his posture straight, eyes steady. The debate had barely begun when Kristi leaned into her microphone, her voice dripping with condescension. "You know, President Traoré," she began, lips curling in amusement, "we civilize leaders like you. Without guidance from countries like mine, you'd still be chasing progress with a stick." The audience let out a collective gasp. Cameras zoomed in, capturing the smug curve of Kristi's lips and the sudden narrowing of Traoré's eyes. For a moment, he said nothing, letting the weight of her words settle like dust before a storm. "Civilize me," he finally said, voice low but carrying across the room. "You couldn't even civilize yourselves." The studio froze. Even the moderator blinked, momentarily forgetting the next question. Kristi's smirk faltered, just slightly, but she recovered quickly, chuckling as though Traoré's rebuttal were beneath her. But Traoré wasn't joking. His words were deliberate, sharpened like a blade. He leaned forward, his calm expression betraying the fact that every sentence he would speak tonight had the power to cut deeper than any insult she could throw. He had faced coups, sanctions, and foreign plots. He wouldn't be rattled by a smirk. Somewhere in the control room, producers whispered to each other. This was already the clip that would go viral. Kristi straightened in her chair, her smirk returning like armor. "Relax," she said, voice dipped in honey. "It's not personal. It's reality. Countries like yours talk about sovereignty because you can't manage accountability. When the lights are off and the cameras leave, it's chaos, corruption, coups. We step in. We stabilize. That's what adults do." A few people in the audience chuckled nervously, unsure if they were allowed to. The moderator forced a smile, eyes begging for civility. Traoré didn't blink. "You confuse intervention with maturity," he said evenly. "You call it stabilizing when it's really centralizing, of your influence, your contracts, your comfort." Kristi leaned in, elbows on the desk. "Oh, spare me the poetry. You want roads, hospitals, ports. Who funded them? Who trained your officers? Who kept your markets from collapsing? People like me." Traoré's hand stayed folded. "People like you," he repeated softly, "sent consultants with clipboards and left with minerals. You kept receipts for the aid but none for what you took. You built ports that led outward, not inward. Roads that connect mines to borders, not farmers to markets. Trainings that teach obedience, not ownership." The studio went still. The moderator finally found his script. "Governor Noem, perhaps we can address policy specifics." "Here's a specific," Kristi cut in. "Your economy survives on donors. Your security depends on foreign hardware. Don't come on American TV and preach independence with borrowed microphones." Traoré turned, meeting the camera as if speaking to someone at home, not the person across from him. "Independence is not the absence of trade. It is the presence of dignity. It means we choose our partners without asking for permission from people who think partnership looks like permission." Kristi laughed, short and sharp. "You're good at speeches. But speeches don't fill stomachs." "They do when they change contracts," Traoré said. "They do when young people stop believing that humility means silence." A hush spread. In the front row, a college student lowered her phone, eyes bright. In the control room, a producer whispered, "We're watching a narrative flip in real time." Kristi tried one more angle. "Be honest. If you had our money and our military, you'd do exactly what we do." Traoré shook his head. "If I had your money and your military, the first thing I would buy is less arrogance." A few gasps, one stifled laugh. The moderator swallowed. Traoré's voice softened, almost kind. "Kristi, you called this reality. Here is another. My people do not wake up wanting to be managed by strangers with confident voices. They want clean water, fair prices, safe roads, honest deals. That requires respect more than rescue." The smirk didn't disappear this time, it cracked. "Shall we talk specifics?" Traoré added. "Or will we keep pretending condescension is a policy?" Kristi adjusted her blazer, crossing one leg over the other, trying to project ease. "Let's talk specifics. Fine. You want respect? Earn it. Nations earn respect by building, producing, and contributing, not by lecturing the people who pay the bills. There was a murmur in the audience, half agreement, half disapproval. Traoré waited for silence before answering. His voice carried no anger, just a slow, deliberate calm. "You assume the bills you pay are charity," he said. "They are investments, investments with interest rates no African bank would dare impose. You fund projects because they serve your supply chains, not our sovereignty." Kristi tilted her head, feigning confusion. "Supply chains? That's just trade." "You make it sound sinister." "It becomes sinister," Traoré replied, "when trade is disguised as aid, when the handshake hides a chain. You call it partnership, but the terms are written in your language, with your lawyers, in your courts. And when we resist, you call us unstable." The audience grew quiet again. Even the moderator leaned in slightly, sensing the weight of the moment. Kristi broke the silence with a sharp laugh. "You're romanticizing this. Do you think the world runs on goodwill? Every country puts itself first. You think you'd be different?" Traoré looked directly at her. "Yes. Because putting yourself first does not require putting others beneath you." For the first time, Kristi's eyes flickered, not with doubt, but with a hint of discomfort. She tried to steer the conversation back to safer ground. "All right, let's get practical. What do you actually have to offer the world without leaning on powers like us?" Traoré smiled faintly. "Dignity, resources that we choose to trade, not surrender. Youth who do not need to leave their homeland to have a future. And perhaps most dangerous to your worldview, a generation that believes the world does not revolve around you." The smirk she'd worn so confidently earlier now looked more like a mask she was struggling to hold in place. "And what," Traoré continued, "do you offer the world without us? Think carefully before you answer." Her silence spoke louder than any rebuttal. Kristi straightened in her chair, attempting to reclaim her composure. "We offer stability," she said at last, her tone clipped. "We offer the framework for a functioning world order. Without leaders like us, chaos would reign." Traoré leaned forward slightly, the light catching the edge of his uniform. "Chaos, you say? Look around, Governor. The chaos you speak of exists now, in wars you fund, in debts you design, in borders you drew with a ruler across lands you never lived in." The crowd murmured. Cameras zoomed in on Kristi's face, her confident veneer was beginning to crack. "You speak of a world order," Traoré continued, "but whose order is it? A system where your economies thrive because ours are kept just strong enough to serve you, but never strong enough to compete with you." Kristi forced a smile. "So now you're the revolutionary philosopher. That's cute. But let's be real, you wouldn't even be here without our infrastructure, our investments, our—" She stopped as Traoré's steady gaze locked onto hers. "Without your permission," he finished for her. "Governor, if you believe my presence here is a gift from you, then you have already proven my point." A low wave of applause rippled through part of the audience. Kristi's jaw tightened. "You claim to civilize leaders like me," Traoré said, his voice steady, "but the truth is, you couldn't even civilize yourselves. Your history is filled with conquest and division, yet you lecture others about unity and progress." The moderator glanced between them nervously. The atmosphere in the room had shifted. This was no longer a polite debate, it was a public dismantling. Kristi tried to respond, but Traoré wasn't finished. "Here's the truth, Governor, the world you describe is ending. The narrative you defend is losing its grip. And the future will not be built in rooms where one side enters with chains and the other is told to be grateful." The silence that followed was electric. Kristi's eyes narrowed, but her smirk returned, forced, but present. "Strong words, Captain. But words don't grow economies, they don't build roads, and they certainly don't keep countries safe from enemies." Traoré folded his hands, calm yet unyielding. "And yet, Governor, words are exactly what your leaders have used for decades to keep us in place. Promises of aid, promises of development, promises of democracy, always with conditions, always with strings." He gestured subtly toward the audience. "You've turned assistance into a leash. You call it support, but it's a trade, our sovereignty for your funding." Kristi tilted her head. "That's the price of playing in the real world. That's the price you demand for entry into your world, Traoré countered. But we're building a new one where nations like mine don't have to ask your permission to feed our people, defend our borders, or speak our truth. A man in the front row leaned forward, captivated. This was no longer just a verbal sparring match, it had become a battle of visions for the future. Kristi scoffed. You think you can just bypass the systems that hold the world together? You think you can break away without consequence? Traoré's voice deepened. Governor, I don't think it, I know it. Because every time your system has failed us, we have survived. And survival breeds strength you can't imagine. The moderator jumped in, perhaps sensing Kristi's growing frustration. Let's move to the topic of global cooperation. But Kristi cut in sharply. No, I want to hear this. Tell me, Captain, what happens when your so-called independence runs dry? When your self-sufficiency collapses under its own weight? Traoré met her gaze without blinking. Then we rebuild. Again. Without you. The words hung in the air like a challenge, and everyone knew Kristi had no easy rebuttal. Kristi shifted in her seat, her smirk fading into something sharper. Without us? You talk as if America is some burden. Without our markets, our technology, and our security networks, you'd be isolated in weeks. Traoré leaned slightly forward, his tone calm but cutting. Governor, isolation is when you have no one. We have each other, our neighbors, our regions, our people. What you call isolation, I call freedom from interference. A ripple of murmurs ran through the crowd. Kristi glanced around, clearly feeling the weight of the audience leaning toward him. You think your alliances in Africa can match the scale of what we provide? She pressed. You can't build satellites, you can't manufacture jet fighters. We can grow our own food, Traoré interrupted, his voice steady. We can secure our own land. We can make decisions without asking permission from a capital thousands of miles away. And when the need comes for satellites and jet fighters, we'll build them too, because necessity is the mother of innovation. Kristi let out a sharp laugh. That's a nice slogan, but reality is harsh. Harsh enough to crush dreams like yours. Dreams? Traoré's voice rose, not in anger, but in power. Governor, we are not dreaming, we are building. It is your vision that's fading, not ours. For decades, your influence was unshakable. Now you're here, arguing with me, because you feel the ground shifting beneath your feet. The moderator's eyebrows rose, Traoré's words had landed like a hammer. Kristi crossed her arms. You sound awfully confident for a man whose country's GDP is smaller than some of our counties. Traoré smiled faintly. Confidence doesn't come from GDP, Governor. It comes from knowing that every step we take is ours, not borrowed, not dictated, not bought. And with that, the room erupted in applause. Kristi waited for the applause to die down, but the noise lingered, feeding Traoré's quiet confidence. When she finally spoke, her tone dripped with condescension. Let's be honest, Captain, your people look up to leaders like me. We've set the standard. Without our example, you'd still be in the dark. Traoré didn't flinch. The dark, Governor, is thinking that the world begins and ends with you. The dark is believing leadership means making others dependent so you can feel important. A camera flash went off, capturing Kristi's narrowing eyes. The tension between them was now electric. You talk about independence like it's some magic cure, she said. But you forget, your markets rely on foreign buyers, your roads rely on foreign aid, and your stability relies on foreign deterrence. Cut those strings, and the whole thing collapses. Traoré clasped his hands, his posture unshaken. And yet, every empire that believed others couldn't live without it eventually fell. Rome, Britain, and yes, one day, even yours. We are not cutting strings, Governor. We are weaving our own fabric. The moderator leaned forward. Governor Noem, would you say you see President Traoré's vision as unrealistic? Absolutely, Kristi replied instantly. It's romantic, not realistic. Traoré turned to the moderator. Romantic? No. I've seen mothers bury their children because policies made far-away valued resources over lives. I've seen farmers sell their harvest for pennies while corporations took the profit overseas. That is not romance, it's injustice. And I will spend my life ending it. For the first time, Kristi didn't have a quick retort. The silence in the hall made the moment even heavier. Kristi leaned back in her chair, forcing a smirk she no longer fully felt. You speak like you're the first leader to want change. But change without power is just noise. Traoré tilted his head slightly, studying her. Then you've mistaken the source of power, Governor. Power doesn't come from military might or economic leverage, it comes from the will of the people who stand behind you. And my people aren't for sale. The audience reacted instantly, some murmurs, some applause. Kristi's jaw tightened. So you're saying, she countered, that you don't need alliances with stronger nations? That you'll just stand alone? Traoré's eyes locked on hers. Alone? No. But I'll never kneel for an alliance. Partnership, yes. Subservience, never. The moderator sensed the shift in energy. Governor Noem, do you think President Traoré's refusal to follow established global structures is dangerous? Kristi seized the moment. It's reckless. Without a guiding hand, nations like his will be swallowed by larger forces. Traoré cut in, his voice calm but edged. The larger forces you speak of, are exactly why we must walk our own path. Your guiding hand has often been a closed fist. That line landed like a punch. A few in the audience even gasped. Kristi blinked, caught off guard, as the camera zoomed in on her expression. For the first time, she seemed unsure if this debate was going her way. Kristi shifted in her seat, her confident posture faltering just enough for the cameras to catch it. She tried to regain control, leaning forward as if proximity would grant her dominance. You talk about fists, President Traoré, but sometimes a firm grip is what keeps chaos from spreading. Traoré's reply was immediate, his tone cutting yet steady. And sometimes that grip is on someone else's throat. His words hung in the air, heavy, forcing even the moderator to pause before moving on. Kristi attempted to laugh it off, a quick chuckle meant to mask her discomfort. So you think the world should just let every nation do whatever it wants? No rules? No leadership? Traoré folded his hands on the table, his gaze unwavering. There is a difference between leadership and control. Leadership inspires. Control demands. I choose inspiration. The audience reacted with a mix of applause and murmurs, the sound swelling until Kristi's forced smile grew tighter. She knew this wasn't just about a debate, it was about optics, and she was losing the room. Traoré continued, his voice softer now but no less firm. If your leadership was so perfect, Governor, you wouldn't need to convince the world it works. The results would speak for themselves. Kristi's lips parted as if to respond, but nothing came out. The cameras caught every second of her hesitation. Somewhere in the back row, a journalist scribbled the moment down, Noem silenced. This wasn't just a clash of words anymore, it was a battle of presence, and Traoré was winning. By the time the debate neared its end, the atmosphere had shifted entirely. What began as Kristi's confident attempt to belittle Traoré had turned into a masterclass in how to dismantle condescension without raising your voice. The moderator gave each participant a final minute for closing remarks. Kristi went first, her tone more defensive than before. I believe in order. I believe in guiding nations that need direction. That's what strong leadership is about, she said, glancing at Traoré as if to provoke one last reaction. Traoré waited for the applause to fade before leaning toward the microphone. Strong leadership is about respecting the sovereignty of others. It's about believing that people can shape their own destiny without being molded into someone else's image. He paused, scanning the audience. Governor Noem believes in civilizing leaders like me. But perhaps it's time some leaders looked in the mirror before deciding who needs civilizing. The crowd erupted. The applause wasn't just loud, it was sustained, carrying a clear message about who had won the exchange. Kristi kept her eyes fixed on her notes, her smirk replaced by a tight, unreadable expression. As the debate concluded, cameras followed Traoré walking off stage, shaking hands, and exchanging brief words with audience members. The headlines the next morning would be unanimous: Traoré turns insult into victory, Noem left speechless. This wasn't just a win for him. It was a statement heard far beyond the debate hall, that dignity, delivered with precision, could dismantle arrogance in front of the whole world. Tonight, we didn't just debate policies, we debated respect. Leadership is not about standing above others, dictating how they should live, or claiming to civilize them. Leadership is about standing beside people, understanding their struggles, and building solutions together. Governor Noem, you believe strength comes from shaping others in your image. I believe strength comes from empowering people to walk their own path. My people don't need to be taught dignity, they already have it. They don't need to be given freedom, they were born with it. To everyone watching tonight, in my country and around the world, remember this. Your culture, your values, your dreams, these are not flaws to be corrected by others. They are your foundation. Defend them, and no one will ever own you. I will continue to lead with the same principle that brought me here: we do not kneel to arrogance, and we do not bow to condescension. We stand, we speak, and we decide for ourselves. Asterisk.